flesh, bone, bound together with the oddest magical incantation. This wretched book is where it all began so long ago, before time, before humanity.
Greetings loyal subscribers and honoured guests. When I took 2 weeks off from work earlier in the year, I finally decided to take the plunge and soft mod my Wii U. I've been putting this off for years because I was worried that I would end up bricking my console and have to buy a new one. With the impending closure of the Wii U and 3DS eShop, I finally decided enough was enough, and I would take the necessary steps to ensure that I could still play all those games that Nintendo wasn't going to support anymore, or offer to us consumers in an alternative form. Modding the Wii U also gave me the benefit of being able to run digital versions of Gamecube games perfectly at full speed, thanks to the built-in Gamecube mode that was only ever used for a handful of releases officially. The task took almost an entire day to complete because I wanted to take my time and do it as carefully as possible. Once my console was ready, I set about putting my entire disc collection of Gamecube games onto my 2TB external drive attached to my Wii U, which took several more days to do. With all this finally done, I decided to revisit some of my favourite Gamecube titles from yesteryear, and I decided upon Eternal Darkness as the first one. The game was developed by Silicon Knights, designed by Dennis Dyack, and was most definitely the high point of the studio's output. A few years later, the studio would be taken down by a lawsuit against Epic Games that backfired spectacularly, in a countersuit that saw a court order that all remaining copies of their Cyber-Norse action RPG, Too Human, be removed from store shelves and destroyed. This, combined with the horrible reviews that came in for their final game, X-Men Destiny, would spell the end for them. Yet at their peak, they managed to produce a trio of fascinating console games that are all worth a revisit. Blood Omen Legacy of Kain was the first, and Eternal Darkness was followed up by a collaborative project with Hideo Kojima to produce Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes. I plan to make videos about both of these games eventually, as well as Too Human, and possibly even X-Men Destiny, but for now my focus will be on the Lovecraftian horror masterpiece Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. The game is not an official tie-in to the works of H.P. Lovecraft, but it is clear where the inspiration came from. Instead of Cthulhu and his pals, the elder gods pulling the strings in Eternal Darkness are Mantarok, Chattur'gha, Ulioth and Xel'lotath. During the early stages of the game, you'll play a character who is a Roman centurion by the name of Pius Augustus, stumbles across the Tome of Eternal Darkness, and there you are asked to pledge your allegiance to one of the three elder gods who are in opposition to Mantarok. He is then zapped by eldritch energies and transformed into an undead version of himself, who kind of resembles a Roman Skeletor, and becomes the main antagonist of the game from that point on. The game takes place over many different chapters throughout time, with you controlling a different character in each of them, most of whom don't have a very happy ending. There is one character who you will gain control of in between these chapters who ties the whole story together and can be considered the main character of the game. A young lady named Alexandra Roivas who has been summoned to her grandfather's mansion in Long Island after he has been violently murdered. From then on, you will get the chance to briefly explore the Roivas mansion, solving fairly rudimentary puzzles, opening up new areas and discovering more chapters taken from the Tome of Eternal Darkness. Each time you read from a chapter, control shifts to the character from that time. Each chapter takes approximately an hour or so to beat, and my total time spent on one playthrough was 13 hours. Because there are three gods to choose from at the start, there are effectively three different paths to play, but in reality it changes very little about the game, mainly which of the other gods is stronger and weaker than yours. Should you put the time and effort into completing all three paths, you will get a special ending movie, but I can't say it's really worth the bother of doing everything 3 times over. It's only about a minute long at the most, and can be easily watched on YouTube. I would say the game is definitely worth playing through one time though. The short episodes mean that the game never grows too stale, and the story is quite fascinating, so you want to see how it all plays out. My only criticism about this approach is that the chapters are sometimes so brief that it is hard to really form any kind of attachment to the character that you are playing as. Visually, Eternal Darkness holds up incredibly well, especially if you were playing the game in progressive scan mode through HDMI. There are a few different ways to do this nowadays, such as buying one of the various HDMI adapters that plug into the Gamecube, running the game on a modified Wii U, or playing via the Dolphin emulator on a PC or Steam Deck, for example. All of the 3D assets in-game look great, but some of the images in the menu can look quite blurry because of the low resolution that the original images used. There is also a great use of lighting throughout, such as the thunderstorm outside of the Roivus mansion at the beginning, or the glow of your weapon after you have enchanted it. This all helps to give the game its incredible sense of atmosphere that is backed up by great audio, presented in Dolby Pro Logic surround sound. The voice cast includes many familiar names, including Jennifer Hale as Alexandra Roivus, and also Paul Iding and Cam Clark. In fact, there is an awful lot of crossover with the Metal Gear Solid cast. The very next game released by Silicon Knights was Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes, so I do have to wonder if both games were being made in parallel, which would explain the same cast being used for both. Otherwise, it's an interesting coincidence.
Ah, Miss Roivus, I'm pleased to meet you. I trust you had a pleasant trip?
Yes, I suppose so, considering.
Yes, my condolences. This is most unpleasant. It's a shame we couldn't meet under brighter circumstances.
Yes, it is. Can we get this over with, please?
Of course, this way. But I must warn you, it's not a pleasant sight. I'm afraid there's not much to see. Miss Roivus, is that your grandfather, Edward?
Yes, it's him. He's wearing our family ring.
The most inventive and unique aspect of Eternal Darkness has to be the sanity effects. Every time you encounter one of the cosmic horrors roaming through the levels, your sanity meter is sapped a little bit, and should the meter drain too far, then your character will start to go mad. This manifests itself through strange hallucinations and tricks that the developers play on you, such as suddenly finding yourself on the ceiling, exploding when casting a healing spell, what appears to be a blue screen of death, and the game randomly deleting your save files, to mention just a few. It's this sort of creative tomfoolery that means that it made perfect sense for Silicon Knights and Kojima Productions to work together to make the Twin Snakes directly after this game, because it's exactly the same sort of trick that Kojima himself would play on his audience throughout Metal Gear Solid, in particular during the fight with Psycho Mantis. While you can call Eternal Darkness a horror game due to its themes, I never found it particularly scary, or even very challenging for that matter. The atmosphere is more creepy than terrible, I would say. I definitely didn't have any problem playing through this one, whereas something like Silent Hill or Resident Evil 7 would freak me the hell out to the point of me not being able to finish them. The lack of challenge mainly stems from how the game gives you the ability to heal yourself quite early on into the story. You can then restore not only your health but also your sanity once you have the right spell in your inventory. Even running out of magic to cast the spell is not really an issue, as you can just run around in circles so that it refills. Being thrown into the trapper dimension by the little scuttling creatures is a bit freaky the first time it happens, then it is just a minor annoyance, and then it eventually becomes something that can be exploited to quickly restore health, sanity or magic by getting yourself sent there on purpose and standing on one of the replenishing areas. Despite the lack of scares though, Eternal Darkness is a fun time from beginning to end, and it remains unique amongst the landscape of other games to this very day. Diak did try to get a sequel off the grounds a couple of times, with the latest attempt being a failed crowdfunding campaign. I think it was just a bit too soon after the debacle of Too Human, the lawsuits, and then his famous outbursts on NeoGAF and the One Up podcast, which did him no favours with the game playing public whatsoever. If they were to attempt to get a spiritual successor off the ground now, I think they may be more successful, especially as Gamecube is currently the hot ticket console among retro gamers, with many of the games going for obscene amounts. I'm going to award the game a score of 9 out of 10, and I would say if you missed the game when it was first released, or perhaps you weren't even born at the time, then you should definitely track it down and give it a go. Thanks for watching this video, which is hopefully the first of many Gamecube reviews on the channel. I also intend to review Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes and Too Human fairly soon. Maybe I will even take a look at X-Men Destiny as well, and then go back to Blood Omen Legacy of Kain. For the near future though, I'll be launching my Compilation 64 Quattro series, soon with any luck, and then finally getting around to reviewing Nostalgia for the Nintendo DS. If you enjoyed watching this, then please consider leaving a like, subscribing to the channel, and sharing on social media. See you on the next one, and in the meantime, take care.